Before we jump into today's episode with Tin City Distillery, I want to take a moment to set the scene and tell you about the area that inspired its name, Tin City, California. Nestled in Pasa Robles, Tin City is a unique and vibrant industrial enclave that has become a haven for craft beverage makers, food artisans, and creative entrepreneurs. Picture warehouses and metal-sided buildings, hence the name Tin City. But behind these humble exteriors, you'll find some of the most exciting wine, beer, cider, and spirits being made today. What started as a bit of an under-the-radar spot has grown into a bustling hub for independent producers who share a passion for small batch, handcrafted products. In Tin City, you can wander from one tasting room to another, discovering boutique wineries, craft breweries, cider houses, and of course, innovative distilleries like our guests today. But Tin City isn't just about drinks. It's also home to artisanal food makers, from handmade pastas to gourmet ice creams. The vibe is laid back, creative, and collaborative, making it a destination for those who love exploring authentic, high-quality craftsmanship. Whether you're a wine aficionado, a craft beer lover, or someone who enjoys discovering the stories behind what you're drinking, Tin City is a must-visit stop in Pasa Robles. So without further ado, let's dive into today's episode. Cheers! Hello, ladies and gentlemen, craft spirit enthusiasts, and those interested in the intoxicating world of craft distilleries, cideries, meaderies, wineries, and the occasional foray into breweries. It's Rich Shane, and welcome to Fermented Adventure, the podcast, where we bring you the fascinating people that are making the mash, fermenting, distilling, bottling, pouring, and delivering to you some of the finest libations in the world. Before we get started, here are a few housekeeping items. Thank you for bringing the podcast into wherever you are and whatever you're doing. We truly are grateful that you have chosen to listen and make us part of your day. It would mean the world to us if you left a 5-star review. This helps us climb in the rankings, and it makes it easier for others to find us. Don't hesitate to leave us your comments as well. If the podcast didn't meet your expectations, tell us why. We're always striving to improve. You can find us at fermentedadventure.com. We are on Instagram and Facebook as Fermented Adventure. Email us at fermentedadventure@gmail.com. All right, FA Nation, let's meet our guests. He's Patrick Brooks. I'm Rich Shane. This is Fermented Adventure, the podcast. Patrick, welcome to the podcast.
Hell yeah. Happy to be here, man.
I am so happy you're here. I am so excited and happy to be talking Tin City Distillery today.
Oh,
How
yeah,
did
baby.
Tin City Distillery get started?
Oh, we're just in the heart of our little drinking town with a farming problem in good old Pasa Robles over there. And the next thing you do after you make world-class wine is distill it into brandy. So that just made sense for us to do in good old Tin City. Yeah. Actually, my business partner, one of them, he is a winemaker. His winery is called Turtle Rock. And he was a winemaker for Saxum Winery, which is it got some major accolades. It was like the first 100-point Robert Parker wine. And I was on a self-guided Revolutionary War history tour of the East Coast. And I was at George Washington's grist mill and distillery at Mount Vernon, and I didn't know much about whiskey. And I was like, holy shit, this is awesome, man. It was like this great educational experience. I got to see how they would have made whiskey up until his death in 1799. And I got jazzed about it. So I get back in town and I'm drinking wine way too late at night with my dear buddy, Don, who's my business partner. And he's saying, like, we dump all this juice down the drain at the winery. We should collect it all and make brandy out of it. And I'm thinking, I don't know what the hell that entails. I'm in. Let's start a distillery. And that's pretty much how it began.
I have so many questions to ask you right now. First and foremost, when you were at George Washington's Mount Vernon Distillery, did you get a chance to meet Steve Bajor?
I did not. No.
All right. Next time you're out doing that tour, need to hook you up. He's the head distiller there.
Maybe we did then. Yeah, I'm not sure.
He loves history.
Okay, awesome.
He's like you, the history of grist mills, history of distillation, distilling, fermentation. He was one of the guests on the podcast, but you guys would probably talk for days and love each other's company.
Yeah, you can't be the distiller of Mount Vernon Distillery and not love history for sure.
My next question is, why were they dumping that juice down the drain?
So we're going to go into that. So what the some of the best winemakers do in California, at least, is when they press all the fruit and the skins are macerating with the juice. They'll bleed off like 10 to 30% of that juice. So you have more skin in contact with a lesser volume of juice. It makes for a heavier mouthfeel, richer, more velvety kind of wine. And everything that's bled off is called saignée. It's a French term that translates to free run, because you literally like crack a valve in the bottom of a tank and free run a lot of this juice off. It's actually the oldest method of rosé production on earth, is the saignée method. Most rosé is produced from the saignée method. So if you're on a warm summer day sipping some rosé, it's probably done that way, unless the fruit is grown specifically for rosé production, like they do in like the provincial method. So we were like, we could collect all this juice, ferment it, make rosé, and distill it. So just like you're doing in like the cognac region of France, for instance, where because all cognac is brandy, right? But not all brandy is cognac. It's distilled from fruit. Anything distilled from fruit is brandy, right? So brandy is distilled wine, just like whiskey is distilled beer. So we were taking all this beautiful Grenache, Syrah, Mourvedre from the west side of Pasa Robles, which is a pretty fun wine growing region, and fermenting it, distilling the alcohol out of that wine and making world-class brandy. Of course, we've gone into the we make whiskey and gin and rum and vodka and all sorts of other things now too, but that's where it started, was brandy. Our heart is really in the fruit production in good old Pasa Robles.
I've been on a number of wine tours, and this is the first time I've had anybody ever tell me about this saignée process.
Yeah, they're all probably doing it to make their rosé.
But I would have thought that in my mind about getting the most out of what you could get out of the juice, nobody would be sticking that down the drain. And this byproduct sounds like it's just this wealth for somebody like you to come along and distill it.
Yeah, it really is. I mean, you got to have a still first. That's going to be hugely helpful for that process. But just like we would use a waste product of all the stems and skins and seeds to make grappa, right? And people like grappa a lot, but it is made from all those astringent, harsher components of the grape, the more tannin-rich components of the grape. So by using this fresh juice for this saignée, we actually have like a really fruity, beautiful product that comes out of that distillation. So grappa is a wonderful use of a waste product, all the stems and skins and seeds, right? You can dump it, or you can reconstitute it with some more sugar and a little water or some extra juice and make grappa. And that's a really cool thing, and people do it all over the world. In America and Scotland and Ireland, we're all used to our whiskey drinking because that's what we mainly do. But the rest of the world drinks brandy. There's so much brandy produced on earth because we have so much fruit, right? And what do you want to chew on? Grapes or wheat? Grapes or barley? Brandy is a really fantastic product. And so by utilizing all of that juice that would just be wasted, essentially, is a really great use of it, because you don't necessarily need to make 10,000 cases of rosé. So you would bleed a lot of this juice, make some rosé, but you might have so much juice that it wouldn't make sense to bottle all of that for a specific winery. So
you talk about the history. Yeah, you talk about the history of brandy in the United States. You talk about whiskey. I mean, brandy was front and center for many, many years as farmers came here and they had this fruit that they didn't want to lose or waste, so they made brandy here. Yeah. And you're just continuing the heritage of what we've done for over 250 years.
Sure. Still, in Wisconsin's the brandy capital of America because they have a lot of fruit that they distill. The whole purpose of distilling in the first place is you're taking a huge volume of whatever it is and distilling it to a concentrated amount. So you can, originally bring it to market, have a lesser volume with the same, the same costs associated with it. So, brandy's a great thing. It's a wonderful use of fruit products, and in general, distillation is the culmination of the agricultural experience, right? This is the last thing you can do after you grow a base product, whether that be corn or rye or barley or grapes or apples, whatever it is. It's a great use of whatever crop you have.
Pardon the interruption. Thank you so much for listening to Fermented Adventure, the podcast. Could you do us a favor? Hit that follow button. It makes it easier for others to find us, and it helps us climb in the rankings. Take a screenshot of the podcast, post it, tag us, and let everyone know that you listen to the Fermented Adventure podcast. Now, back to our podcast. You're sipping wine, you're enjoying wine, you've got this extra juice. How do you go from this American history, taking this tour all over the world, learning history and stuff, to becoming a distiller?
Yeah. So, you can read about all of it online. It's easy to figure that out.
But it's so much more fun hearing it from you, Patrick.
Yeah, I know. Like, for anybody who wants to get into distillation, you just got to have a license to do it, So, I did, my background's in criminal justice, and then I got a teaching credential. And in both cases, I realized I didn't want to spend my time dealing with other people's problems all day long. So instead, we got into distillation. I had always worked in selling high-end wines and working in hospitality as well. So this was kind of just the next step in all that, was creating our own brand and our own distillery and making all these products. Like, I'd poured lots of distilled spirits over the years. To actually produce them ourselves is pretty fun. It's that whole next step. So then when you get to a point where you're making like a cocktail with all of your products, right? Like, I made like our ripoff version of Benedictine, and then made a Vouqueret out of that. And I was like, this is 100% things that we produce, from the vermouth to the Benedictine ripoff to the brandy. It's real fun to see the results of all those efforts.
What I'm hearing you say is this: you're somebody that it's lifelong learning. It's continuously bringing stuff into your mind, into your space, that you can savor and, suck the marrow out of the bone, per se. How the self-made learning of distillation, how did you go through the process of, with the setting up the still and all that for Tin City Distillery?
Yeah, kind of figure it out as you go, I guess. So our first still was one that we made, and we got it licensed. We got an 06 permit for it with all the licensing. The licensing is the most strict and difficult part of any of this, right? So, and there's a reason for that. I know there's an effort to like overturn some legal constructs for allowing people to distill at home, and I mean, I'm all for that too. I have no issue with it. But also, you are producing, in like the 4 shots, poison essentially in distillation, right? And you're it can be a hazard to your health. You can blow yourself up. There are potential for all those things. So I get why there is regulation to a degree too. So we had to go through all those steps really intentionally. And so we built a still using a 55-gallon Fuji film canister, stainless steel film canister. This real thick metal Fuji film canister, right? They used to ship these chemicals for production of photography all over the world in these things. So it was a great vessel for that. And then we built a reflux still with a big column and packed it with copper mesh for that reflux. That was a fun process. We got it all licensed, and it was run over open flame. I was surprised that nobody even cared about that. We were able to get a license for it. The fire department came to the distillery and signed off on it. And I was like, well, that's crazy, because this looks like a bunch of hooligan rednecks built it. And then so over the years, though, we've gotten a few different stills. They're all pretty customized. This is our 4th still now that we have, and it's a 375-gallon copper pot still. It's a great still. We use that bad boy quite frequently. And so to figure out how to distill, sure, a part of it was like the online research, but one of our other business partners had been distilling for a handful of years, without a license, and he brought some knowledge to the table too. But really, if you invest yourself in learning the basic chemistry, and you put some time and effort into reading, then you can figure out how to distill. It is the licensing aspect of it that's kind of tough. So when we had to apply for our license for the first time, there's a segment of the TTB basic permit that you have to explain the processes of distillation itself. And I think it might have been the ABC permit for California, but it's one of the two. You have to explain the processes of distillation. And I'm like, is this a trick question? You're asking me to tell you how to distill? Like, I shouldn't know that. But but we did. And really, it's, it is more basic than a lot of people think. It's, you're just separating certain compounds from others utilizing temperature, right? That's all we're doing. So when you look at the concept of how I mentioned earlier, brandy's distilled wine, right? Whiskey's distilled beer, rum's distilled sugarcane, right? Tequila's distilled agave, mash from agave in Jalisco, Mexico, in the town of Tequila with the Weber Blue agave plant specifically, right? So these it's not that wild to get from the point of fermenting, barley to the point of distilling whiskey. You just have to, to understand that like water's going to vaporize. I thought I lost you. Sorry. Water's going to vaporize at 212 degrees Fahrenheit, right? We're never going to get that hot. We need to simmer that wash at 174.3 degrees, the vaporization point of ethanol, the ethanol that we can all consume because of a lot of evolution that points human beings in the path of our ability to consume ethanol. We can go into that too. That's pretty fun. This is a fun story. But if you look at that essential chemistry, right, it's not out of the world of possibility for anybody to get into this. And it's fun. Every day we just have a blast doing it. We're living in a world-class wine country and making, great spirits and seeing the impression that like Grenache wine leaves when you distill Grenache versus like Chardonnay versus Syrah or Mourvedre. It is really amazing to notice all the nuanced differences in anything that we're distilling.
My first introduction to Tin City came from a documentary that I saw about this wonderful area, this industrial area. Somebody got an idea to bring wineries together, and it just expanded from there. What's it like to be a distillery at Tin City and the overall experience for that consumer?
Oh, it's wildly fun. So yeah, Tin City is a cool little makers market. There's like 30 wineries, our distillery, the Barrel House Brewing Company's there. There's one of Pasa Robles' 2 Michelin-starred restaurants is right there. And there's other restaurants, a pasta market. It's really just a fun little community. And a lot of good stuff happens there. Like on this last Thursday, we had our forklift parade, our annual forklift parade, where we deck out all the forklifts with lights and this and that. And it's a fun family event. We had a big comedy show there the following night. So there's just always a lot of activity in Tin City, but it's great because if you're getting this Saignée that we were talking about earlier from these high-end wineries in Tin City, it's like borrowing a cup of sugar from your neighbor. But in this case, that cup of sugar is a tote of unfermented grape juice, right? It's just a great little community place, and people come from all over, Uber or rideshare over to Tin City because I don't recommend driving a bunch. And then they party like rock stars in Tin City and try some really great wines and spirits. You can cover a lot of territory in a short period of time right there, doing research and development.
It's like this huge smorgasbord of just whatever you want. You just have to pace yourself through it. And it's the community, I think, that what makes it so romantic.
Yeah,
and
for sure.
The camaraderie that everybody's making what they're making, their craft, but they're all coming together for the success of that one community.
Yeah, and you get the documentary was great. The Tin City documentary is a fun way to learn about a lot of the players that are in there. But the best way is just to come experience it. So, like I said, Pasa Robles, our little drinking town with a farming problem. It's a great place to dive into, if you like wine. But we have like 13 distilleries in Pasa Robles now, and in our little area, and some people just come for distilled spirits tasting. So, or there's plenty of beer too. It really is. If you like imbibing, it's the place to be. It's a little boozy mecca.
You spoke about your beginnings with brandy.
Yeah.
and then you transformed into other spirits. Obviously, you're getting your fruits locally. What about sourcing for your grains and the other expressions you're producing?
Yeah, for as far as grains go, fortunately for us, we have the Barrel House Brewery right next door to us. So a lot of distilleries, I've noticed this trend, right? They'll work in collaboration with a brewery to make the wash. And that's hugely helpful because there's a lot of wastewater associated with the production of beer. So it really takes a lot of that footprint out of the scenario for distilleries to work with a brewery. We have Barrel House right next door to us, and that's who we utilize for the wash production. But also Firestone Walker Brewing Company is just down the street from us too, and they're a pretty renowned brewery as well. A lot of people get their wash from them in our area, so we collaborate with the brewery to produce a specific wash that we want to use. So this rye whiskey right here, for instance, this bad boy. This was produced with the rye grain. Rye is my favorite. It's so flavorful. It's spicy and it's tropical at the same time, and it's got baking spices. And if you bite into a piece of rye bread, right, doesn't it taste so different, like in a Reuben? The same translation is there with beer or whiskey production with rye. So even though there's a couple different kind of row ryes that we'll use, but a 2 versus a 6 row, but rye has so much fun character. So for this bad boy, we fermented the wash with a Belgian yeast strain that produced a bunch of like pineapple and bubblegum and banana, real fun characters. It was tropical and sexy. And so like distilling that was a blast. So we've tried a bunch of different grain bills and wash portfolios with Barrel House, and it's great to utilize their expertise for the production of our whiskey wash. So we make bourbon, we make the rye and a single malt too. So we're actually almost out of the single malt whiskey that we have, but just the other day, this is the big news. The TTB recognized American single malt whiskey for the first time ever. Okay. So when we submitted for the label approval for the single malt, I didn't think it was going to get approved because it was American single malt whiskey, but it did get approved. In fact, it was like 2 days after we submitted, we get approved American single malt whiskey bottled in bond. And to my knowledge, that is the one we made is the only bottled in bond American single malt whiskey produced yet. And so here we're about to run out of this batch. And that's when they approve that designation. But we worked with Barrel House for that too. So that's just malted barley that we actually, it was that particular wash was aged in Foudres for a little bit, the giant barrels. And then it was going to be a beer project, and they decided not to go that route with it. So we distilled it instead, and it was this over the top flavorful single malt whiskey. It was unbelievable. And so that was a wonderful use of working with the brewery next door. Is we got this bad to the bone batch of malted barley wash that we weren't expecting. And 6 years after we did, it made this bitch and whiskey. So it's great to work with a brewery for a lot of that if you don't have your own brew set up or yourselves. And we just don't need to, because we have like right across the street, the Barrel House Brewing Company.
That excites me even more as a consumer. Many of the conversations we've had with distillers, when they do get to work with a brewery, it's a lot of times it's a happy accident. That wash that they're getting is something that didn't meet their criteria standards for making a beer, or they had too much, as in the conversation with COVID. They didn't want a lot of this product to go bad. And then the distillers got a hold of it. Most, as you pointed out, you're doing your own fermentation. But in this case, they're doing it. It's a consistent relationship. And it's fun because of the methods that brewer's using that many distillers maybe won't even want to touch or don't have the time through production to even tackle if they don't want to or can't.
Yeah, it's great because like fermenting's what takes a while, right? That's what ties up the brewery. So we just brew the wash over there, and then we ferment everything over at our place. And it really is like there have been happy accidents for sure, and those are cool. Sometimes that's an awesome thing. I mean, with fruit production too. Like I got a bunch of smoke tainted Cabernet Pfeffer before, which there's like very little Cabernet Pfeffer grown in America. It's this crazy obscure Bordeaux varietal, and it was smoke tainted from Santa Cruz, and it was just like they were like, oh, this we can't make wine out of this, so we distilled it instead, and it was this awesome like kind of like smoky, delicious brandy. So things like that have happened with the working with the brewery next door too. Happy accidents are sometimes my favorite ones, but it is great to be intentional about it and to be able to brew exactly what you're looking for as a whiskey wash.
When you mentioned smoke tainted, was that from fires that were in the area?
Correct. Yeah. So that was just like a lot of fruit production in California just had smoke taint that particular year. So we distilled it instead. It's a blast. It was the 2021 vintage, I think.
This is for me why we're going to get into a conversation now as to you can't ship outside of California to the rest of the United States. We're missing out here on the East Coast. We're missing out on some amazing, fun product that unless you're in your neck of the woods, we're not ever touching.
I know that sucks. It has to go through distribution to get out there. So it's actually a federal thing that we can't ship outside of California. So we were at this meeting with the California ABC, all the local distillers on the Central Coast were, and we mentioned that we can't ship outside of California. And the ABC guy was like, yeah, you can. He had no idea at all. And we're like, no, you can't. It's a federal thing, not you guys. And they don't talk, right? The state government and the federal government. So it's illegal for us to ship outside of California. Spirits are a heavily regulated industry, and you have the 3-tiered system, right? So we have to it has to go through distribution. So, which is tough. Distribution in America is tough unless you're one of like the huge distilleries, right? If you are one of the big conglomerate distilleries and you're making, if you're Maker's Mark, you have no issue selling through some of the big distributors, but smaller distillers can have problems. So we have a handful of smaller distributors that work out really well for us, but like a Southern Wine and Spirits rep is never going to sell our product. They're going to sell a lot of cases of the big boy stuff. So, and of course, like distribution is a tough thing in America for all distillers. Like, who are the distributors of spirits during Prohibition?
During Prohibition?
Yeah.
It were the bootleggers.
For sure. It's the mob. So then after Prohibition, the government gives their friends, the mob, the right to now legally distribute booze. And nothing has really changed since then, right? We deal with all these archaic laws from just post-Prohibition. We like to put laws on the books in this country, but we never really take them off. And so everything that we're dealing with is from the Tide House rules, those laws that came out right after Prohibition ended in 1933. So distributing is tough. So that's the way I can get it to the East Coast, is it has to go through a distributor, and then they can maybe ship it to you. Like there are certain license holders that can ship to like 33 states, but they still need to buy that spirit wholesale through a distributor to get it out to you. Directly, I cannot ship it to you. I can only ship within California. And even then, that's only a COVID provision. So brandy, I can ship throughout California, no problem, because brandy's regulated a little differently than the rest of the spirits are. For like whiskey, for instance, we can only ship that throughout California, 2.25 liters per person per day, because of a provision during the pandemic. So they allowed us to ship spirits, and then that might go away at any time. We're not sure if we're going to lose that sooner or later. That provision keeps getting extended by the California state government every single year. So they just prolonged it for like one more year, and we'll see if it stays that way. But we might lose the ability to ship spirits in California as well. And the big distributors want that too.
So to bring this all together, are there products from Tin City Distillery that you're able to ship through your distributor? Can they go onto a website and purchase, or are there areas in the country that you are actually shipping to? Or is it just a volume of production for you that says, we're really happy with what we're producing and shipping to California, and with that volume, that's all we can really do anyway?
No, we're super down to ship outside of California if we could. Like I said, we legally can't. But if you do appreciate the spirits, you can encourage your local bar or liquor store to buy them through a distributor called Liberty Distribution. LibDib is what it's called. That's one of our distributors, and that's great. So they just opened up a territory, for instance, in Washington, D.C. So if there's enough people that want our spirits in Washington, D.C., they can buy them through LibDib. That bar just like goes onto an app, and they can literally purchase that way. So I can't ship to that bar though. I have to ship to LibDib's distribution house in Benicia, California. It has to touch that warehouse first before it can go anywhere else. I'll never be able to ship directly to a bar or restaurant. I can't even sell, whiskey to a liquor store that's down the block from our distillery. It has to go through that distributor first.
It still seems like in 2024, as we almost turn the page in 2025, that there are so many obstacles to obtain some of these wonderful spirits and products that Tin City Distillery is producing. And really where it comes down to is make your flight plan, come on out, enjoy all that Tin City as a complex, as a community has to offer, and then you get, take it home with you at that point.
Yeah,
right?
you could be getting shitty in Tin City too. That's great. So, I wish it was easy just to ship things. Like there was an issue I dealt with the TTB. Whatever it was, I said on the phone, I was like, this is bullshit. And the guy was like, oh, totally. This makes no sense, right? But you have to do it. It's still the law. And the best way to change that is just to talk to your legislators. That's the way to do it. So if you really want to change the industry, it's one thing, but the mob, the distributors still own it all. So in the meantime, yeah, come to Tin City. That's the way to go. And you can, enjoy beer, wine, spirits, and all sorts of fun stuff right there.
You've got your agriculture, you've got your grain production. Talk to the barrel program that you have, because I imagine you've got a plethora of barrels to select sometimes to do a special release or a special aging. What is your mindset there as far as how you're aging and what you're doing with your barrels?
Yeah, that was we have a couple cool things going on with barrels. So we have a program where you can actually buy your own 5-gallon barrel of bourbon or, brandy, rye, whatever you want to do. And we actually we distill and put into that. It's actually a 6.3 gallon barrel, but after a couple of years of aging, it'll be about 5 gallons of ready to rock and roll bourbon. And you can just go in and on it with friends and have your very own barrel that then gets with your logo on it, that then gets labeled as your barrel of bourbon afterwards. It's a really cool program. So that's an individual barrel program we have. But then also we do have a second building in Tin City, and that's where all the barrel storage is for our production. So in there, we've got a lot of whiskey. We have bourbon, rye, aging, a little bit more single malt, a lot of brandy. We have a lot of vermouth too. Making vermouth is one of my favorite things in the world to do, and we're about to release our very first vermouth here pretty soon. So under our wine license that we have associated with the distillery. So that's pretty fun. But the barrels, we just go down there every now and then and whisper sweet nothings to them. Like, come on, baby. You want to finish up soon. Let's get it. So they the barrel program is all down below. One of the big aha moments I had distilling was we put all this effort into our barrel program, into new oak primarily. And of course, if it's going to be whiskey, it has to be aged in new American oak. There are strict rules for a lot of that. But with brandy, there's not. And I was in Ireland not long ago, and drinking a bunch of Irish whiskey, which is all, there's very little new American oak in Ireland. It's all like hand-me-downs, just like they do in the Sugar Islands for rum production, hand-me-downs from like Jim Beam and Jack Daniels and stuff. These used American oak barrels. And you know what? Irish whiskey is fucking amazing. And they're not aging it in brand new oak, right? So I was like, this doesn't matter that much. Now I get it. Like it can't be bourbon unless it's aged in brand new oak and new charred American oak, right? But for a lot of the brandy production, we use a lot of neutral oak or near neutral. So a lot of French oak barrels that have been aging like for 18 months or so with Grenache wine, one time used, and we'll utilize that. And it makes sense. Like after you've put if it's wine or beer into a barrel at say 8 to 15, 16% alcohol, because alcohol is a great solvent. It's only going to extract so much character from that barrel. If you then put a product in that's like 120 proof or something, it's going to take so much more from that barrel. So you can get a lot of use out of used oak too. So we do a blend of both. For a lot of the whiskey, it's all new. And I have like some bourbon that we just aged for 4 years and then just put into some other brand new oak barrels. We've got bourbon that's that aged for 4 years in heavily charred American oak, and now we've transferred that to one-time used wine barrels as well. So, and that was another trip to Ireland that I loved. I got a bottle of Green Spot that was aged in some Bordeaux barrels, and holy shit, it was amazing. So I was like, well, we have to do this. We're aging whiskey in wine barrels now. And that is a trend that you see from time to time in America as well these days. So, a lot of those whiskeys and brandies find a second home in some of those barrels too. But the barrel program is, there's no right answer. It's about what you want, right? You can choose your own adventure with oak aging 100%. And so it is really one of those things. Sometimes you don't know what it's going to be like for years. And that's kind of the fun in it too.
What I find fun and what I love is you've kind of taken the guardrails off of this mindset of it has to be done this way because everybody's doing it this way. And I see a place where you're at in Tin City where you have all these options. It's not just one, you got options, and why not play with them all?
There are no rules. Yeah. And a lot of that happens with that mindset definitely comes from the wine production in Pasa Robles. So like if you're in France, there are a lot of laws that you have to stick with for your production of your wine, right? Or if you're producing brandy in the Cognac region of France, because all Cognac is brandy, but not all brandy is Cognac, right? So, or if you're in making Calvados in northern France in Normandy, where it's cold and rainy and they grow apples and pears and stuff. There are laws, there are rules. You stick by this that have been in place for a long, long time. But a lot of winemakers move from France to California to make wine here because there are way less rules. We don't care. Try it. Like it doesn't have to be these specific varietals. You can do a little Cabernet Sauvignon and Petit Verdot, and then throw some Syrah in the mix, some Rhone varietals with your Bordeaux, and it's like, fuck it, nobody cares. So it is great. It's amazing to go outside of the box on that. One of my favorite winemakers when I was a really young guy, and I was just getting into the wine world. We were at this big wine event, and there were these some of the best Paso wines are there, and he just starts pouring different brands bottles together and making his own little blend. And I was like, you can do that? You can do that? So the rules are out the window. And when it comes to the production of spirits, that sentiment definitely is in our veins here too.
Who inspires you, Patrick?
I mean, I don't know. Like no person in particular, I guess. I don't know. I think I'd say that we talked about history a little bit, right? I used to think that like maybe somebody like George Washington did. And sure, that's a wonderful character that everybody can learn from, right? But it's hard to not look at some of these people as less than like demigods, right? They're not. They're just people. They're just human beings. And so understanding that mindset that we're all just people who are all part of this world together, who have built upon those skill sets one by one is really is cool. It's cool to look at the whole totality of all the circumstances and then try things out. Like I think, and I mean, George Washington did that himself. He liked this book called Plutarch's Lives, and it was all it was this little conglomeration of all these like really important characters in history, right? From Marcus Aurelius to you name it, and that's how he shaped his life. So is looking at what everybody else who has done, come before you has done. I think that it's just pretty fun to try new things, and sometimes they don't work, and that's okay, right? It's cool to learn from that. It's always cool to say like, hey, that was a bad idea. I'm not going to do that again. And like we distilled fennel juice one time. We got like 2 totes of fennel juice and fermented it. There's a few bricks of sugar in fennel juice, and it was terrible. And I wish we hadn't done it, but it had kind of this like anisey kind of characteristic to it. It was interesting for sure. It was something, and you just throw things at the wall and kind of see what sticks. So I'm inspired by all the spirit and wine producers out there that I try this and that, and I go like, well, that's pretty cool. Like the like I mentioned that Green Spot one before. I was like, I tried that and I was like, well, we need to put whiskey in wine barrels now for sure. Or like vermouths. It's really fun. Like the small mom and pop shops. I love making port and sherry too, right? Because like you need brandy to make port, sherry, or vermouth, right? We make wine aperitifs. So we did this. It's like a local Biendecito is a great vineyard in California. And it's a late harvest Pinot Blanc that we arrested the fermentation with brandy that was infused with honeysuckle and bergamot and lemon and elderflower. And like that was like for sure inspiration came from something like Saint Germain. But there's also plenty of white wine aperitifs out there that are small production that I'm just like, wow, this like the flavor here is amazing. So the inspiration comes from just trying everything and everything that comes your way. And going into it without any preconceived notion of whether or not it'll be good. I all the time at the distillery, we have like snobs come in, right? I feel like, and I don't want to be one of those ever. So, you know, and you see it in the wine world all the time. We're like, oh yes, notes of this. Shut the fuck up. Do you like it or do you not like it? Like that's what matters. So, you know, I have people come in and they'll try our bourbon and you know, people love it. And then there'll be somebody who's like, I don't like it. And that's okay. And they'll come in all the time and say like, oh, I like whiskey, but I'm not a brandy drinker. I'm like, okay, because you've only had like E&J and Corbel and Christian Brothers. I get that. Those are not good. I mean, and they sell way more of it than I do. So I'm not totally hating it all. Good for you guys. But it's a great use of a waste product. I don't know. Some of the most expensive and best distilled products on earth are brandy too, right? So if you're coming out of the Cognac region of France or Armagnac, so I don't know, like going into it without any preconceived notions is cool. When I tell people all the time that they're like, oh, I love wine. I'm like, cool, brandy's distilled wine, and they go, what? Or brandy, you know, whiskey's distilled beer. And they go, and of course that's a very great simplification for it, but it's 100% true. And people go, I've been drinking whiskey for 30 years. I'm like, yeah, because that's exactly what did you think it was? And so, you know, it's just try it all. And, you know, I always tell people like, if you like it, that's what's important for sure. They say like, what's the exact way I should taste this? Everybody has an opinion on how you should taste it. The way that works best for you is the best one for sure. Like there are a couple notes that I could throw in there, but I really think that, no matter what it is, what it comes across your palate, if you enjoy it, that's it. That's all that matters.
You touched upon that consumer experience, right? People that come in with either all these preconceived notions or none at all. They come in with their own experience or no knowledge at all.
Yeah.
Where you're located, you may have somebody, you know, people that come in and they've been drinking wine all day. how do you work through the palate at that point? Or, there's so many things that they've tried and then they find you. Is there an experience or is there that conversation that you have to kind of bring them into the brandies and your whiskeys and things like that?
Yeah, that's why we close at 6 p.m. because nothing good happens in Tin City after 6 for sure. People have been drinking wine or beer all day, but a lot of people are in Pasa Robles just for the spirits now. They're not even attempting anything else. We have a little distillery trail. People will jump on. It's actually California's only distillery trail, and so they'll jump on like a tour bus of some kind and go around to all the distilleries just trying those. Also, that's wild because how many distilleries can you try in a day? We all have cocktails that we serve too. You have to express it in 1.5 ounces per person per day. So, but it still adds up. So, I think that's one of the beauties of just being in our area is there's a little bit of everything to try, and that's encouraged for sure. In Pasa Robles and Tin City specifically, you can go around and try it all, but like it can be tough. Some people can walk in there. I mean, if they're hammered, I'm not serving them. That's illegal. You can't do that. But also, like, you're not going to really get a good idea for what the spirits are at that point either. So I always just tell people like eat first. That's a good thing. And if we're the first stop or the last stop, there's something to be said about both of those experiences. But definitely, like a lot of people are they're whiskey drinkers. That's what they're here to try. And that's really fun to turn a whiskey drinker on to brandy as well. And that's something we do every day.
I don't want to miss out on any of your children. The SKUs of brandy, what do you have? What is offered that people can look forward to?
Okay, so we make a lot of stuff. So as far as the brandy goes specifically, we have a French oak and orange peel brandy. It's kind of like our version of Grand Marnier, but there's less sugar in it. So I've tested it. Grand Marnier is 20 grams of sucrose for every 100 milliliters, and ours is only 2.5. I had to test that because we got fact checked by the Orange County Weekly about sugar content. And so that was really good to know. I always thought it was like less, but I didn't know it was a fraction as much. And so that makes a great margarita topper or based in an old fashioned too. It's delicious. We make a French oak and cinnamon brandy, which is really fun for the holidays with some eggnog. I call it a silent night because you're going to be. We have our straight oak brandy. So we do a 2-year and a 4-year oak brandy that are the 2-year one is just aged in new charred American oak casks. So a lot of people that are whiskey drinkers, what they really like is oak barrels. They like all the caramel, toffee, and vanilla you're getting from the American oak, mainly the vanilla, because you have all the vanillin that's in American oak versus French oak, right? So whiskey drinkers like love that one. Another one of those that's aged for 4 years, and then also a 4-year reserve brandy that's then returned to aged in American oak, but then returned to a one-time used French oak cask from Saxon Winery that held Grenache in it first. That one's pretty fun. We then, with a lot of the brandy, we make white wine aperitifs too, and fortify white wine with herbs and botanicals to make a lot of vermouth. That's always fun. And vermouth is a really pretty thing. A lot of people aren't into vermouth in America, but they should try it out. It's vermouth is very special. And then we also have, like I said, our rye whiskey, our bourbon whiskey, our single malt whiskey, vodka. We've got Chocolate Love. This just won the double gold at the San Francisco Spirits competition right there. And we were up for best in show too. It's a cacao nib infused vodka. It's pretty good stuff. We make a mango ginger black peppercorn infused vodka that's good for Moscow mules. A hibiscus lemon vodka that's really good. Like I like it with hot water and a hibiscus tea bag, lemon and honey. Make a hot toddy out of it. That's pretty fun. We make canned cocktails too. So we have a vodka lemonade in a can that's easy drinking, 5.5%. A blackberry bramble in a can. A vodka soda lime. There's no sugar in it. That's easy drinking. Another happy mistake is we had this beautiful West Side Pasa Robles Grenache that was smoke tainted that my business partner had. And he had like 7 barrels. And he's like, we should distill this. And I was like, Yeah. Or we could make sangria in a can out of it. So we did that, and that's pretty fun. Cangria for the holidays too. It's delicious. Um, so like a lot of them are oak products, a lot aren't. We do a ghost pepper infused brandy. That's hot, but it makes a really good margarita or a Bloody Mary or like a oyster shooter. We make a walnut brandy. That's the Italians call that nocino. The French called Le Cordonneau. My grandfather, when he got out of World War II, he started a walnut orchard right here in Templeton. So we use all those nuts. So yeah, so my grandpa's nuts in every bottle. They're great. And that's a really fun one. We experiment with lots of other things. We have our version of Campari. I call it the Campari ripoff, but it's Asian terracotta, which is the oldest method of storing any alcohol that humans have. Right? We have it's a terracotta pot from Italy. My dear Italian friend, he imports these things, Manu, it's called iTech, and he imports massive concrete tanks and terracotta pots. So this one is about a 35-gallon terracotta pot, and we make a bitter orange Amaro in that, and we color it with cochineal beetles instead of red dye number 4 and stuff, or 3, because you don't want to have red dye. And the original method for making things red is these cochineal beetles that live on prickly pears, right? So they're in lipstick and stuff like that too. People use these things all the time as a natural red coloring. So it's colored with those, and then purple carrots. And it's a really cool take on Campari. So we make spritzes with that all the time. That's pretty fun. Yeah, I mean, there's research and development is the best part of the job for sure.
You just keep listing all those things you're doing, Patrick, and I'm working on scheduling my airline flight out.
Hell yeah, let's do it, buddy.
Your area. The next time we talk will be at Tin City Distillery. I'm looking forward to. Is there anything that we haven't talked about today? Anything you want people to know more about you or Tin City Distillery?
I mean, I see a lot of gin behind you. Like we got lots of gin too. That's one of my favorite things to make too. I love it because we have in California we have all these great herbs and botanicals at our disposal. So we make really California fruity, juicy, heavy Meyer lemon gin. It's pretty fun. But yeah, it's the best way to experience it is just to come out to Tin City and try it all. So I encourage everyone to do that. We'll do some research and development together for sure. But all of it, no matter what it is, it's all based off of history. We're doing nothing different than nobody can, right? It's all pretty much been done at this point. So you have your own nuanced take on anything, but we're just trying to make potent potables and good old Pasa Robles.
Number one, I can't wait to try everything you produce. Number two, I can't wait to see the t-shirt selection in the merch area, because all those things that you spit out better be on a t-shirt.
Yeah, we have got the one I'm wearing right now says it says Pasa Robles, our little drinking town with a farming problem. And then we have got another one. It's a Prohibition era quote. The t-shirt says, and it says this on the wall right behind the still too. The man banging on the door was yelling alcohol, tobacco, and firearms. We figured he was bringing supplies.
I've never heard that quote before.
Yeah. It's pretty fun.
This has been awesome. I really am grateful for your time today. Thank you for being a friend of Fermented Adventure. And like I said, our next conversation needs to be happening at Tin City Distillery. We'll get there before 6 because I don't want to get there at the end and you close and you say you have to leave. You don't have to go home, but you just can't stay here.
that happens over there from time to time. So yeah, come on by anytime. We'll roll out the red carpet. You can put your head right under the still and say, ah.
Really?
Yeah.
For those that are looking for you on the socials, on your website, where will they find you?
We have our website is tincitydistillery.com. all of our fruit-based stuff is under it's Wine Shine is the label. So it's Shine from the Vine. So you can go to wineshine.com too, but it's all encompassed under tincitydistillery.com. And then you can also at that point check out some of the other cool options that are in Tin City, or our Instagram is at Tin City Distillery. I think we have a Facebook too, but I couldn't tell you.
It's all about Instagram. It's all about putting your mouth under the still. It's all about fun. And that's what I get from you. It's this intentionality of just going to have fun.
Yeah, you bet. And then you can also always listen to my podcast too at Quick and Dirty History.
Quick and Dirty History. I can't wait to follow, subscribe, and learn more about where all this comes from in the world.
We talk about a lot of booze in that too.
Thank you so much, Patrick. Thanks for your time today.
You bet, Rich. Rock and roll, man. We'll see you soon. Cheers.
Cheers.